Yes, hello. This message is for Russia and China and Canada. Canada's government and police are a bunch of psychopathic Nazi criminals. We know that. And the evidence that I presented now for years has been quite accurate. And my projections came true as I said they would. Didn't they, Canada? Am I wrong? Don't bother threatening me in the horoscopes, okay? Under the Globe and Mail and MSN. And mentally, I'm just fine. But you people are not fine. I'll tell you that right now. As two international community member states owe me an explanation, China and Russia. Okay? You owe me an explanation, China, for what you did to me at your embassy and my wife as well. It would appear, at least on the outside, that Russia and China are protecting Canada's criminal politicians and security, it would seem. Russia, you don't take my evidence, okay, 4 years ago, that I gave you, entrusted with you for my family, your embassy, and they did nothing with it. So I'm going to be calling the Russian Foreign Ministry and I'm going to request a response as to exactly what happened to the material that we gave you 4 years ago, your embassy here. I think that's fair. Your embassy gets all the verbal reports. Your mission in New York got all the verbal reports from me. All of them are true, including the religious vision ones, which are very true. Of course. I'll say this to Canada, and I'll say this to Russia and China. Resistance is futile, okay? Because I'm going to tell you governments something, all right? Climate change is just going to get worse because you governments are refusing to act against Canada for what they've done to my wife and I. Instead, you try to turn us into criminals because I get mad and angry and say things on the phone in anger. So you try to manipulate that into criminalization of my person. That's just as low as you can get below the belt. The international community, them here, are very aware of what Canada did to my wife and I, and my children and my property. Yeah, that would make anyone really angry at governments of the UN that are liars, that don't represent what they claim they represent on the Security Council. The UN has not, the UN has, and membership has not lived up to international law. You haven't lived up to human beings' rights to asylum in your embassies. You've lived up to nothing. As far as we're concerned, the United Nations are a bunch of liars, and just like us, only when violations of the Rome Statutes hit the news cameras internationally does the UN Security Council do anything. And unfortunately, that includes Russia and China. I'd like to indicate to Russia and China that the ICC has 32 cases right now pending, okay? Now, here's an interesting question. If they have 32 cases they're investigating against global governments on violations of human rights in the Rome Statute, then here's the question to Russia and China. Who do you think the criminals are in those 32 cases that the ICC is investigating? Well, I'm going to tell you who the criminals are. The police and 32 governments. The police and 32 governments. That's who are the criminals. My, don't you people realize this? You don't realize that the ICC has 32 active cases that they're investigating against governments. Who carries out Rome Statute violations for 32 governments? The police. That's who. The police, folks. That's who they're investigating. What do you think? What do you think? It's criminal syndicates that... Yeah, well, sure. Yeah, the police are criminal syndicates as well in all 32 states. And some of these 32 investigations I know right now are Nazi atrocities. And yes, Western security and NATO states and their governments are Nazifying, just as I had projected years ago. What are you talking about, Russia? What are you talking about, China? You're guilty. My wife and I have been living here in the Nazi criminal state of Canada now for 18 years, and 18 years of criminal acts by the state, and the state and the police turning around covering them up as they go along, and then threatening us when we try to bring them forward to Russia and China. What do you call that, Russia and China? Because this message is directed at you, and I'll make sure I give the Russian government here the video address where they can listen to us. And listen to me, Mr. Ambassador of Russia here in Ottawa. What exactly are you doing? What are you and your colleagues doing? Are you knocking on our door, offering us asylum in your embassy? No, you're not. You say that Russia. You say that your president says he supports all of those that don't like living in Western states. He states he'll grant asylum to Westerners and refugee status. Oh, really? Is that right? Well, we should be the first on the list. And I requested your government help get us out of Canada, my wife and I. No response. I got news for the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Moscow. I'll tell you this. Your embassy here, they treat everyone here the same. It doesn't matter if it's filthy Nazi Ukrainians protesting at your embassy with flags, okay, supporting the Nazi regime of the Ukraine. It doesn't matter if it's victims of Nazi atrocities like us by Nazis in security here and their filthy governments. Doesn't matter. Your embassy treats us all the same. They just completely ignore the victims here of the Canadian government. Mr. President Putin, your embassy here is ignoring any allies that they have here, including me and my wife. They just ignore us. What do you call that? When Russia doesn't defend victims of Nazi crimes, President Putin, what do you call that? Your own embassy here. Doing nothing, Mr. President, after the evidence I gave them 4 years ago. They've done nothing. Your mission in New York has done nothing. Your Washington embassy has done nothing. And it's my Nazi case that confirms your allegations against the West. I don't know. Who are the lunatics, President Vladimir Putin? Who are? I'm the one that supplied your government the physical identity of these extraterrestrials that China's mentioned, along with Mr. Menedlev. I'm the one that supplied that information of exactly who they are and what they look like. Me. I should be getting a lot of credit for the information I provided the Russian government over the years. And I've reported to your mission in New York, Foreign Ministry of Moscow, consistent criminal acts against us after we gave your embassy the evidence. And you did nothing. So that's about it. That's all I have to say. And listen to me, Ken. Don't threaten me, Mr. Prime Minister, you and your filthy police. Don't even do it in the horoscopes. If you got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. Because what you say will definitely be used against you. So I'll press with the Russian Foreign Ministry, and I'm going to tell them what happened with the Chinese consulate here. I'm going to tell them what happened. And I'm going to request what your embassy did with my evidence. And I've already asked that question, and I haven't gotten an answer. But I'll tell you this. Listen to me. What you people at the UN have to worry about even more, and I'm going to tell you about this, is God's response to what you're doing to my wife and I. And you, Canada, you need to worry about what's coming in the next few months as a result of what you've been doing to my wife and I. Pretending that all your crimes don't exist, huh? You know what? You're mental psychopaths, Trudeau. And your parliament's full of Nazis, Nazi psychopaths, just like Adolf Hitler. What does it say here? Here's the Nuremberg laws for you, Justin. Right there. What does it say here? Let's see. Here we go. Here's a good one for Canada and member states of the UN. The Nazi High Command denies atrocities against Jews to the international community. Well, you know what? Yes, they did. But you know what? Let me tell you something. The League of Nations, they did not mind at all the atrocities Hitler was committing between 1933 and 45. The League of Nations just turned a blind eye. They waited until 50 million people were murdered. That's the Western League of Nations and Adolf Hitler sleeping together, including the United States, the British, the French, all of them sleeping with Adolf Hitler. Just like they're sleeping with the United States, the head snake in Washington. The great Nazi power left is the United States White House and their Pentagon and their Congress. They're Nazis. Shalom. And let me tell you something, one warning to you, Canada. And I'm warning you right now, if you don't recant your position, you're going to get it, Mr. Prime Minister, you in Canada. And you're going to get it hard. You're looking for a trip, Mr. Prime Minister, you and your country to the end. Only not by Russia and China, but by my direct prayers to God. You understand? Well, you don't, eh? Well, Justin, let me tell you something. Something's just around the corner for you and your security. And I'm warning you, when it hits you, you're all finished. You can take that to the bank. And that one's coming from God to Wonders Parliament Hill and your filthy security.